I, a 34-year-old man named Ethan, had known my fiancée, a 33-year-old woman named Sophia, since childhood. Our parents were lifelong friends and we grew up together, eventually falling in love as teenagers. It seemed like our families had always expected us to end up together, and for a while it felt like we were following a predetermined path. When I moved to another city to pursue my master's degree, Sophia stayed behind in our hometown to work on her nursing degree. The distance put a strain on our relationship, and after a year, we decided to remain friends and focus on our individual goals. Despite dating other people, we always knew that our separation was temporary and that we would find our way back to each other someday. After graduating, I started working in my field and waited for a transfer back to my hometown. When the opportunity finally arose, I was thrilled. Sophia was in a long-term relationship with a nice guy at the time, but I could sense that he was wary of our friendship. Out of respect, I took a step back and focused on my career. My boss and mentor, a great man named Marcus, became a close friend and confidant. One day he approached me with a unique opportunity. An open position in Tokyo for 2 years. The salary wasn't huge, but all expenses, including rent, hotel, and travel, would be covered. Marcus explained that it would be a challenging role, but an excellent chance to prove myself and advance my career. He shared his own experience of taking a similar position years ago and how it had helped him climb the corporate ladder. After careful consideration and discussions with my friends and family, I decided to take the leap. I could save most of my salary and gain valuable experience, so I packed my bags and headed to Tokyo. The first year was a struggle, as I adapted to the new culture and social norms not only in Japan, but also in the other Asian countries I visited for work. One thing that caught me off guard was the attention I received from women in these places. They seemed fascinated by foreigners, and I found myself with many opportunities to explore casual relationships. I made sure to be upfront about my temporary stay and lack of interest in anything long-term or serious. I ended up extending my contract for 2 more years, and during that time, Marcus would visit occasionally for vacations or work supervision. I'll admit, we had some wild times together in cities like Angeles City in the Philippines. When my contract finally ended, I returned home and put a down payment on a house just outside the city. After living in a metropolis of 37 million people, I craved some space and tranquility. About a month after my return, I ran into Sophia while visiting my parents. She had broken up with her long-term boyfriend a year prior, and we started talking more seriously about rekindling our relationship. I was hesitant to jump into intimacy, as I had developed a taste for variety during my time in Asia and wanted to make sure I could commit fully to Sophia before taking that step. Eventually, we slept together, and Sophia was surprised by how much I had changed. She could tell that I had gained a lot of experience, and when she asked about my past relationships, I found myself trickle-truthing her. I didn't want to reveal the exact number of partners I'd had, as it was quite high and might have scared her off. Our families were thrilled to see us back together, and after speaking with Sophia's parents, I proposed. She moved in with me, and everything seemed perfect. However, there were some red flags that I overlooked, like Sophia's constant need for reassurance about my happiness with her. As we approached the end of 2019, with our wedding planned for June 2020, the world was about to change in ways none of us could have predicted. But before the pandemic hit, Sophia and I would face our first major hurdle. It was a few days before New Year's when Sophia asked to have a serious talk. We were sitting at the kitchen table with her cousin Tammy, whom I had also known since childhood, nearby on the sofa. Sophia began by asking me not to interrupt or freak out, which immediately put me on edge. She explained that she felt insecure about our differences in the bedroom and worried that I wouldn't be satisfied with her in the long run. She feared that I might eventually cheat on her, ruining our future together and potentially harming our children. I was stunned, thinking she was about to end things between us. But then Sophia dropped a bombshell. She asked if I would be willing to open up our relationship so that she could gain more experience and feel less insecure. She assured me that I was the only man she had ever loved, and that none of her previous relationships had led to marriage because of that fact. I was in disbelief. Surely this had to be a joke. But as Sophia continued to explain her reasoning, I realized she was serious. I started yelling, asking if Tammy had put her up to this. Tammy claimed she was just there to support Sophia, which only added to my confusion and anger. Sophia went on to say that I would be free to do as I wished under the same rules VJ, only random people, no repeats, and no emotional connections. I firmly said no, insisting that I didn't want one-night stands. I only wanted her. In a moment of frustration, I looked at Tammy and said I wanted to sleep with her, knowing it would get a rise out of Sophia. She was furious, declaring that Tammy was family and someone we both knew, making it gross for me to even suggest such a thing. We argued back and forth, with me stating that if Sophia went through with this, our relationship would be over. I told her I loved her, and that we could work through anything together, but not this. I stormed off to the guest room, grabbing my pillow on the way out. I could hear Sophia and Tammy talking downstairs, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. Sleep eluded me that night, and the next day at work, I was a complete mess. Sophia started 2 weeks of night shifts, which meant we wouldn't be home together for a while, giving us both time to cool down and revisit the issue later. She would leave dinner in the fridge for me every day with an "I love you" note, and she texted frequently, but I kept my responses short. The following Thursday, I noticed an email notification on Sophia's account about a hotel reservation near my office. I knew the hotel well, as I often went there with coworkers. I thought maybe Sophia wanted to apologize and take me out for a night. But when Friday came, there was no invitation, just her usual texts asking about my day. I was sick with stress, wondering if she had actually gone through with her plan. I even started searching dating sites for profiles without pictures, trying to find any evidence of her infidelity. My boss, Marcus, noticed my distress and asked what was wrong. I confided in him about the situation, and he suggested we go out for lunch and ice cream to take my mind off things. We ended up at a different hotel restaurant, as I couldn't bear the thought of being near the one Sophia had booked. Despite Marcus's efforts, I couldn't eat or drink. He told me to take as much time off as I needed, paid or unpaid, to sort things out. I knew I couldn't stay at home anymore, not knowing what Sophia was doing. I rushed back to the house, packed as much of my belongings into my car as I could, and returned to the office. Marcus suggested we stake out the hotel and wait for Sophia to check in. I was hesitant, but a part of me needed to know the truth. We set up in the lounge bar, and I started downing drinks, still hoping this was all a misunderstanding. Around 6:30 p.m., Marcus tapped me on the shoulder and pointed out Sophia at the front desk, not in her work uniform. I wanted to scream, cry, and confront her all at once. We waited 10 minutes after she got into the elevator, then approached the front desk ourselves. I asked the receptionist to put me through to Sophia's room, and when she answered, I started yelling, telling her that if she went through with this, our relationship was over. I hung up and rushed out of the hotel, with Marcus following close behind. I ended up staying at Marcus's place, my phone blowing up with calls and texts from everyone imaginable. I didn't answer any of them. The only person I spoke to was my dad, explaining in PG-rated terms what had happened, and that I needed to leave town for a bit. Over the next 2 days, I ignored the constant barrage of messages and calls, unsure of what to do next. Marcus mentioned some financial steps I should take to protect myself, which I hadn't even considered. The house, wedding expenses, car loans, VDJ, we had kept separate accounts for everything. I emailed Sophia, stating that this would be our last contact and that I was leaving the city for a while. The wedding and everything else was off. I called my dad back and had a long conversation with him. He was crushed, but understood my need for space and time. He still held out hope that Sophia and I could work things out. 10 days later, I boarded a plane to Bali, determined to escape the pain and confusion. I never replied to any messages or emails from Sophia or anyone else. I didn't know if she had stayed at the hotel that night or left, and frankly, I didn't care. I spent the next month in Bali, climbing into a bottle and going offline, with the exception of occasional contact with my dad and work. I wasn't even concerned about getting fired at that point. I wish I could say I enjoyed myself, but I was mostly just drunk, filled with rage, shame, and hatred over how things had unfolded. After 3 weeks, Marcus asked if I could return to Tokyo to handle some work-related issues. We discussed the new global virus that was starting to make headlines, and I considered going back to Canada to settle things before potential lockdowns were implemented. I arrived in Tokyo on March 1st, feeling a sense of purpose in getting back to work, even if it was only temporary. Marcus suggested I return to Canada, but I brushed it off, thinking the lockdowns would only last 30 to 60 days. I needed time to plan my next move. Little did I know those 30 to 60 days would turn into a year-long stay in Japan. During that time, I focused on work and tried to avoid any news or information about Sophia. My house back home was rented out, and while I stayed in touch with family, I refused to hear anything about my ex-fiancée CEE. On September 21st, I received word that my father had suffered a heart attack. He was doing well, but needed a triple bypass surgery. Although the procedure wasn't as risky as it had been decades ago, I still wanted to be there for him, just in case. I knew returning home would be a circus, with everyone wanting to know what had happened between Sophia and me. I dreaded the thought of seeing her again, unsure of how I would feel or react. But my father's health took precedence, and I knew I had to be there for him. Before my flight, I met up with Marcus at a local spot near the office. He was already a few drinks in when I arrived. We talked about my dad, work, and eventually the topic of Sophia came up. Marcus asked if I had been in contact with her, and I told him I hadn't. He then informed me that the big boss wanted to see me, but considering my father's situation, it could wait. I figured I might as well get it over with, as I had a list of things I needed to accomplish during my visit home, and meeting with the boss was one of them. I entered the office for the first time in what felt like an eternity. Some familiar faces were missing, replaced by a few new ones, but the usual suspects remained. People nodded and greeted me as I made my way to the boss's office with Marcus. The boss, an intimidating figure I had never spoken to directly before, motioned for us to sit down. He began with a rant about responsibility and dedication, making some valid points along the way. Then he turned to Marcus and asked why they should keep me around. Marcus praised my work, stating that I had saved accounts, acquired new ones, and that they couldn't find anyone else to do my job for the below-market salary they were paying me. I was stunned. What the F*******, I thought to myself. The boss and Marcus started laughing hysterically, like in that bar scene from Goodfellas. The boss wiped a tear from his eye and told Marcus that's why he was the best VP he had. I felt slighted despite making a good salary. The boss then leaned in and said, "Listen, kid, I know you had some problems with your woman, so let me give you some advice." He proceeded to quote someone, though I can't remember the exact words. The gist of it was that women are never satisfied with what God gives them, always trying to change and improve their appearance. If even God can't please them, how can a mere man? I was blown away by his words. The boss looked at Marcus and said, "I can trust you to handle this properly. Your mother will kill me if I have to fire you." It suddenly dawned on me that they were related. Marcus and I walked out of the office, and I confronted him about the 20% below market salary comment. He put his arm around me and said, "Don't worry about that, I got you covered." Confused, I asked if I was getting fired or disciplined. "No, dumbass, you're getting promoted," Marcus replied, kissing me on the side of the head. "You could have told me that beforehand, you dick," I retorted. "Nah, it was much funnier this way. I missed you, kid. Now let's go get effed up." I couldn't believe he wanted to start drinking at 8:30 in the morning, but then again, this was the same guy who got into a fistfight with a monkey at a hot springs in Japan after getting drunk before on sake. The monkey won, by the way. We ended up getting wasted and talking about work, my future, and of course, Sophia. Marcus advised me to meet with her and get closure, saying that we had both done stupid things, but we were still good people. He believed that once I resolved things with her, I would be able to move forward without the emotional baggage holding me back. The plan was set. Marcus and I would meet for a drink after work the next day, and then I would go see Sophia. I had no idea how to handle any of this, feeling like I was barely keeping my head above water. But I knew I had to make things right and see her one last time in order to move on. I just hoped she wouldn't say anything stupid. So there it was. At least I had a path to closure. I spent the next day with my dad, talking about everything under the sun, but avoiding any heavy topics that might cause him stress. I assured him I was there for him and that this trip was about reorganizing my life, closing old doors and opening new ones. As I prepared to meet with Sophia, I couldn't help but feel a mix of anxiety and anticipation. Would she apologize for her actions? Would we be able to have a civilized conversation? Or would old wounds be reopened, leaving us both in more pain than before? Only time would tell, but I knew I had to face this challenge head-on. With the support of my family, friends, and colleagues, I felt ready to take this next step and finally put the past behind me. Whatever the outcome, I was determined to emerge stronger, wiser, and more focused on my future. Sophia had been a significant part of my life, but she didn't define me. I had my own dreams, goals, and aspirations to pursue, and I refused to let this setback derail me any longer. As I boarded the plane back to Tokyo, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I had confronted my demons, made peace with my past, and was ready to embrace the unknown. The world was full of possibilities, and I was eager to explore them all. Looking back, I realized that the pain and heartache I had experienced had shaped me into a more resilient, self-aware, and compassionate person. I had learned valuable lessons about love, trust, and the importance of staying true to oneself, even in the face of adversity. And so, with a renewed sense of purpose and a heart full of hope, I embarked on the next chapter of my life, ready to face whatever challenges and triumphs lay ahead. The future was mine to create, and I was determined to make it a bright one.